got a pick six. Pike tricked up and then ends the world with the big one-hit. Here's the pitch. Back up the middle, that's gonna be trouble. That one hit the post and then headed in!
I know you haven't been here long and you know there's a task at hand, but your impressions of San Antonio thus far?
I mean, I like the way they get. It's sitting off, so it's hot, and I just love the way that it's a very quiet city, chill.
Talked with Duke's Kaman Maluak during the Final Four. He said, "I love this place. It reminds me of Senegal, where I'm from. About the weather and how nice and relaxing it is." Put the little subtitles on there because, apologies, the audio wasn't the best on that, but able to chat with Maluak, who now could be on the Spurs radar as we are that close to the NBA draft. Welcome into the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates. Bobby Mendez, Hector Ledesma, draft special, talking all things draft, although in block number 3, we'll take a little bit of a kind of a tour, a little bit of a side tour, a little bit of a side deviation before we get back on track and talking all things draft.
A weave?
A weave, the little bob and weave. But it is going to be all things draft right here on the Sports Update. And you know where we're starting, right? The Spurs have 2 lottery picks, number 2, number 14. Been a lot of discussion about whether the number 2 is untouchable. First, Giannis Antetokounmpo reports. Then, most recently, the Kevin Durant reports. All of it, though, in terms of what Milwaukee or Phoenix wanted, hinged on some combination of the Spurs' number 2 overall pick. And so, Bobby, as we look at the Spurs and getting into draft night, any question in your mind about what they should do in terms of picking at number 2?
Best available, and I believe that will be Dylan Harper. Load up. Again, assets are going to be important. Whether or not we make that kind of a move for a Kevin Durant or for a Giannis, we still need to have a solid team. And if we're picking the best available, then we're still going to be moving on that right track. And whatever necessary adjustments that need to be made along that way, well, we can make them with the right assets.
Yeah, Dylan Harper, if Cooper Flagg is undoubtedly the top player in the draft, and he is, then Dylan Harper is undoubtedly the second best prospect in this draft. And I think that's where we are, and that's where the Spurs are. Now, the question seems to be, and maybe for some it's not a question, I'll get to that here in a bit, but it's, you already have a player like Harper, 2 of them, Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox. Does that matter? Would that preclude you from making another decision or making the decision to go with Dylan Harper? You have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, yes. And I think I kind of want to veer off and give an explanation for why you kind of still want that. Because, again, yeah, we have those athletes. We have those players already. But, again, it's all about having the right pieces and being able to trade for other pieces, right? So if we have the best available, let's say, at the guard position, and we need to get stronger at the forward position, well, then those things will allow those things to come a little bit easier in perhaps maybe a trade or some other kind of transaction for the team. So it doesn't help us any if we just get someone of lesser value and we have that because perhaps we're going for maybe a different need. But I feel like with the right pieces, just move pieces around, I think that's the better decision.
Let me put it another way. You know, people are saying, well, they already have players like Dylan Harper. Why do they need another one, right? Okay, let's reverse it. Let's say, and these guys don't really exist anymore given today's game, but let's say they get a dominant big man.
Right.
Would a dominant big man complement Victor Wembanyama's game? Like, right? Like you don't necessarily know the answer to that either, right? It's not like a twin tower would work automatically with Wemby. Now, yes, it would be, you can never have too much height, right? And especially height that's that skilled. But depending on the big man, if you get a guy who's put him on the block, throw it to him, let him dribble, and again, that guy doesn't really truly exist in today's game anymore. But when people say fit, that doesn't necessarily fit either.
Right.
So you're left back at what today's game is around the three-point line, length, speed, athleticism, rangy defense, And Harper, if anything, adds to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's got great size, great athletic ability, and not to mention a huge basketball background. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Grew up with his dad being in the NBA. So all around, I think it'd just be a wise choice.
Yeah, Ron Harper, former Bulls guard, won several titles with Chicago, started his career with Cleveland, playing with other teams, but Ron's son Dylan now slotted, if you will, to be a Spur as the Spurs look to build around Victor Wembanyama. And finally, I say finally, but it's been since 2018 that they've been to the playoffs, make a run toward the playoffs there, 2019 I should say, when they lost to the Nuggets there in the first round, finally making a run and getting there. It's something that for this franchise, the history happened a couple years in the 80s, happened that 1 year in the 90s when Robinson, Elliott, AJ, everybody was hurt and landed them Duncan. It's not something that Spurs are used to,
right.
And now trying to get back to the playoffs. And I think it starts potentially with this NBA draft.
Yeah, let's make Fiesta even more fun again by having some of those playoffs happen during the Fiesta events. Because we were having a chat with friends at Fiesta. Remember the days we used to just be like, hey, let's go to Nielsa just for an hour and then head over to the Spurs game after that.
Yeah.
So.
I say it starts, basically put them over the top is maybe the way I should put them. Maybe this is the draft that puts them over the top in terms of putting them back in contention. So this is the way the NBA draft order is going to go, barring trades here when the night kicks off. The first overall pick, the Dallas Mavericks have it. They're going to get Cooper Flag. After that, the Spurs. Philadelphia's third, Charlotte's fourth. Utah rounds out the top five. Washington, New Orleans, Brooklyn, Toronto. Portland's got the 11th slot, Chicago 12, Atlanta jumping back in there at 13, and I see jumping back in there because the Spurs hold their pick at number 14, courtesy of the DeJounte Murray trade. And so again, the Spurs with the 14th overall pick and the number 2 overall pick. And that 14th pick is going to be something we're going to get into right after the break because we are just getting started right here on the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates. On the way, we've talked about what the Spurs should do at 2. What should they do at 14? Next.
Ready! Set! Go!
It's a bad idea to run a foot race against these guys, just like it's a bad idea to go up against the billion-dollar auto insurance industry all alone.
Hire Martinez and Associates. With us, it's personal.
Welcome back to the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates. So if the Spurs go Dylan Harper at 2, and all indications are they are, what do they do with the 14th overall pick? Now, we know the Spurs have several needs, among them inside help. They got killed on the boards, especially when Victor Wembanyama went out with injury last year, Bobby. And so inside depth has been a problem. You know, they had Zach Collins. They traded him away in the De'Aaron Fox deal. Charles Bassey, injury problems. Sandro, not really a big in the traditional way. He's more of today's modern, hang out there, hang out on the three-point line and shoot threes that way. Jeremy Sohan, probably their best rebounder outside of Wemby when you look at the way they're built. And so that seems to be kind of the thought process. Go big at 14, especially if you're getting Dylan Harper at 2. You have thoughts on 14?
Yeah, no, don't want to always agree with you on everything, Hector, but I think that is something, a need for the Spurs. I think that's a really big need right now. And you know, if there were someone that great available to be at the second pick, I think that's where the Spurs would be looking in the first place. But again, such talent at the very top. But if he is available at 14, I think the Spurs definitely should be able to draft him and bring him a part of the San Antonio Spurs.
One name that could fit that bill, and he might not be there, but Duke center Kaman Maluak, we heard from him at the top of the show, And Kaman Maluwak, a young man who was here for the Final Four, played well. Now, he's raw. Here's the thing. You're getting a product that is by no means a finished product. But he can be a fantastic rim protector. He's 7 foot, by the way. He's a big kid. He's long. He's stringy. You can put him by the rim protector, and he can be one of those lob guys, Bobby. One of those lob guys. And he can work. We talked a little while ago about how would Wemby really do well with the guy who you just put on the block and you throw on the ball. That's not Maluwak's game right now. Maluwak's game is length, defense, speed, athleticism around the rim, and I think he could be a good complement. Now, the question is, will he be there? And others will say he's too raw. If you're going to go 14 and we're looking to compete sooner rather than later, he's too raw still. Still, I think he is worth the gamble at 14.
Yeah, at 14, especially what the Spurs have done in the past. You look at what they did with Kawhi Leonard. You look at what they've done with Castle. Those are just some of that pop to mind right away. But Spurs develop players, and I think this is right in their wheelhouse, if you will, as far as drafting is concerned.
Yeah, and if your thought is, well, Maluwak's not quite ready yet, well, you're kind of then complaining on both sides, right? Because you're like, what do we need Dylan Harper for if we already have Castle and Fox? Well, then, hey, you can still add Maluwak and bring him along. You don't need the scoring. You don't need to have 5 scorers out on the court. And Maluwak, I think, can bring a skill set that really is valuable and missing for the Spurs right now. Still to come right here on the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates. How about some football talk? We'll get into that after the break.
You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. Walking on beams of light, 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 light.
Been in a crash? It's illegal for lawyers to contact you first. If yours did, it could ruin your case. Don't trust law firms that break the law. Choose Martinez and Associates, voted San Antonio's best law firm 3 years in a row. After you've been in a crash, go with the law firm you can trust. Call Martinez and Associates. With us, it's personal.
Call 210-337-1111. That's 210-337-1111.
Welcome back to Sports Update, brought to you by Martinez and Associates. Give them a call, 337-1111. Again, 337-1111. Website, martinez-law.com. For us, it's personal. Great folks, great attorneys in need. Make sure you look up Desi Martinez and that great group of folks over at Martinez and Associates. And I know Martinez and Associates, not only a big sponsor of this show, but a huge supporter of RC Audio Sports. Bobby Mendez, Coach Robert Villafranca, and company, Cesar Mendez, as well, a huge part. Reese, as well, such a big part. Do a fantastic job, and others, as mentioned, do a fantastic job of bringing you live high school sports throughout the season, including, and it's Texas, we can say it, led by football. And I know you guys have done this for several years now, Bobby, where you've broadcast live high school football games, and it's since expanded to basketball, volleyball, other sports, but football, that's right around the corner. I know RC Audio Sports ready to do that again, because August is going to be here before you know it, right? With a blink of an eye. Always. So you guys already kind of getting things going.
We've got our SAISC schedule ready to go. We've got some scheduling that we're looking at when our coverage of Harlandale ISD and their respective district. We're looking at that because we're also covering volleyball during the time that we're doing football as well. So we'll have a broadcast Tuesday night for volleyball, Friday night for football, Thursday night, Friday night, and even Saturday. So we will be having a full schedule of high school football or sports coming up here in August. So like you mentioned, Hector, initially RC Audio Sports, we were audio only, but the transition happened right around COVID, and video was in demand for those kinds of things. So we made the transition, and here we are.
Yeah. And if you look them up, you'll see RC Audio Sports and RC Audio Sports 2. RC Audio Sports 2, Bobby, is where your SAISD concentration of games is kept, correct?
A couple years ago, when we got a contract to cover the SAISD games that are happening over at the sports complex, we were having 2 games at once, and we needed another channel to put those games on. So we had RC Audio, the original channel, and then SAISD is where we kind of placed our CID Sports 2 is where we placed the SAISD games. So we're able to simulcast, if you will, 2 games at the same time.
Growing by demand, high school football, local, every weekend once the high school football season. And Bobby and Coach Villafranca also part of the crew over the KCWX TV Game of the Week. That will happen again. 12 games, a game on KCWX, Channel 2, although if you have Spectrum, it's Channel 4, but on every other TV platform, and including YouTube TV, it's Channel 2. Game every single Saturday, starting with the first weekend to the last weekend, and plus a bonus Central Catholic Antonian game on that Friday, which this year falls on the last Friday night of the high school football season. So Saturday to Saturday, week what the UIL calls 0 to week 10, 11 games plus the one on Friday, another 12-game schedule for KCWX. They now come back for their, hard to believe, Bobby, but their 5th year now since we've joined them. They did, Casey, now in fairness, they did high school football before, but since we came along with the great Gary DeLon and Coach Jerry Comalander, our team now getting ready for a 5th season on KCWX.
Wow, time
flies, doesn't it?
Time flies.
Yeah.
And it wasn't during 2020.
It was our first season, 2022. Right? 2022, 23, 24, 25. No, 2021 was our first season.
Yeah, because I remember having to have those dividers in some of the games
when we started
where we, having protection, if you will, during that time. But yeah, it's been such a great, fun ride with KCWX and their commitment to doing high school football. So I'm ready for another season.
Yeah, ready for another season. And again, it's going to get here before you know it. And then accordingly, right here on the Sports Update, we're planning on keeping up with all of that. So we hope to see you back in early to mid-August as we pick up again with what's going to be a football-heavy show. I know you and I have talked about it. Is number one, it's hard to do a sports show. It's impossible to do a sports show, especially in Texas in the fall, and not have it centered on football. It just is what it is. With high school, with college, especially now with UTSA growing locally and becoming what it's become, UT A&M, the Cowboys, the Texans, it's impossible to do a show. But even beyond that, we're looking at a very football-centric show. Now, that does not mean we're not going to talk about, for example, boxing.
Right.
The big Martinez and Associates boxing card, the Saturday showdown, the summer showdown is coming up on Saturday, August 23rd. Obviously going to cover that. The Spurs will always be in the news, but really looking for a football-heavy show once we come back in August.
Yeah, and there's so many great coverages for the whole city of San Antonio. We want to touch on all of it. You know, of course, obviously, we'll be at certain games as well, so we'll know the most about those, but we want to keep everyone up to date on what it's looking like around the city.
All right, back to wrap up today's Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates right after this.
Been in a crash? It's illegal for lawyers to contact you first. If yours did, it could ruin your case. Don't trust law firms that break the law. Choose Martinez and Associates, voted San Antonio's best law firm 3 years in a row. After you've been in a crash, go with the law firm you can trust. Call Martinez and Associates. With us, it's personal.
Call 210-337-1111. That's 210-337-1111.
You're gonna see me shine, 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 shine. Walking on beams of light, 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 light.
Welcome back to the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates. Back to the NBA draft. It is on Wednesday. Wrapping it up, Bobby, kind of prediction time. We've already talked about what we what we can expect. So maybe a prediction aspect from another angle. Bobby Mendez would be surprised during the NBA draft if
the Mavericks don't pick Cooper Flag. I'd be surprised.
The stunner.
Yeah. Because then everybody's going to be out of whack, and who knows? Maybe it could happen. I don't know.
You seen the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner?
Love that movie.
What if the Bo Callahan effect happens to Cooper Flag?
Yeah.
And then everybody's out of whack.
Finds out nobody shows up to his birthday party.
Right. And then Brian Wright, the GM of the Spurs, calls the GM of the Mavericks. Take that, you pancake eating.
Yeah.
But speaking of, though, Brian Wright has handled the Kevin Durant, at least if reports are true, the way he's handled the Kevin Durant, he's holding firm. He hasn't exactly been bending over backward to make anything happen. He's been very firm in terms of how the Spurs have handled things. I would be shocked if the Spurs didn't go big at 14. I think, to Bobby's point, it would shock everybody, right? But the Mavs will go Flag, the Spurs will go Harper. If they go another swing player, or I would actually be surprised, Bobby, maybe put it this way. If the Spurs do what they typically do at 14, I'd be surprised. And what do I mean by that? If the Spurs pick some European guy that nobody's ever heard of, I'd be surprised at 14 because I think they are. I don't know if there's any guys out there that kind of fit that mold. The European guys we already know about. We've already heard of them and they're on the draft board. I don't suspect. And that not only happens with Europeans. Remember when they picked Josh Primo that year? You're like, what?
Yeah.
I think the Spurs will come away with somebody that you've heard of or that goes, okay, that makes sense. That tracks at 14. I would be surprised if that didn't happen. All right, that does it for not only today's show, but for the first half of the Sports Update. As mentioned a little while ago, we're back in August. But until then, it's been a lot of fun, bud.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Good first couple of 3 months.
Yeah, that's what I say. Our first show this way, and I think it went pretty good.
Yeah, Cesar Mendez, Reese have been fantastic behind the camera all, should I say, first part of the season on Homer Lopez and Huberto Lopez, fantastic with K Alamo Studios. And so we say farewell until August. We'll see you then right here on the Sports Update presented by Martinez and Associates.
Ready! Set! Go!
It's a bad idea to run a foot race against these guys, just like it's a bad idea to go up against the billion-dollar auto insurance industry all alone.
Hire Martinez and Associates. With us, it's personal.